The most dangerous decision you will ever make is to remain the same while hoping for something different. Look around you. The evidence is everywhere. People staying stuck in the same situations year after year while wondering why nothing changes. They keep the same habits, the same friends, the same thoughts, and then feel surprised when they get the same results. Growth demands separation. That's just how it works. A seed must break open before it can become a tree. A bird must leave the nest before it can truly fly. And you, my friend, must be willing to outgrow your current circumstances before you can reach your potential. Would I stay the same to keep everyone comfortable, or would I keep growing even if it meant outgrowing some of the relationships I had known my whole life? Today we're going to talk about why you shouldn't be afraid to outgrow everyone. Not because you're better than anyone else, but because your growth is your responsibility. And sometimes growth means change, and change means separation. You see, most people misunderstand what growth really is. They think it's about adding things. More money, more knowledge, more stuff. But real growth is about transformation. You becoming a different person. Not just a person with more, but a person who is more. When a caterpillar transforms into a butterfly, it doesn't just grow wings. Its entire body changes. Its diet changes. Its capabilities change. Its entire life changes. And once it becomes a butterfly, it can never go back to being a caterpillar again, even if all its caterpillar friends wish it would. And this is where the separation begins. This is where you start to outgrow people, places, habits, and ways of thinking. This separation isn't something you do to others. It's something that happens naturally as a result of your growth. Now, here's where most people get stuck. They feel that separation beginning and they get scared. They worry about what others will think. They worry about being alone. They worry about seeming different or being judged. And most tragically, they worry about hurting the feelings of those they care about. So what do? They shrink. They play small. They hide their growth. They dumb themselves down. They make excuses for not pursuing their dreams. I don't want to seem like I think I'm better than everyone else, they say, or I don't want to leave anyone behind. Listen to me carefully now. The greatest disservice you can do to others is to limit your potential to make them comfortable. Your job is not to stay small so others feel big. Your job is to become everything you can become. When you limit your growth to protect relationships, you're making a terrible assumption. You're assuming the other person can't or won't grow with you. You're deciding for them that they wouldn't want to or couldn't rise to the new standards you're setting, and that's not fair to them or to you. I know a man who wanted to start a business, but his friends always laughed at. Those entrepreneur types who thought they were special, so he never started. 5 years later, he was in the same job, making the same money, hanging out with the same friends, laughing at the same jokes about those entrepreneur types. But inside, something had died. His dream had died, and with it, a piece of his spirit. Now, let me ask you this. Who was served by his choice to stay small? Not him, and not his friends either, because they missed the chance to either grow with him or to be inspired by his example. He robbed them of that. The fear of outgrowing others is really about several deeper fears. The fear of being judged, the fear of being alone, the fear of the unknown, the fear of having to take complete responsibility for your life with no excuses. But here's the truth you need to understand. Growth isn't optional if you want a life of meaning and contribution. It's not something nice to do if you happen to have some extra time. It's essential. Life is either expansion or contraction. You're either growing or you're dying. There's no standing still in this river of life. The moment you think you can just camp out where you are is the moment you start moving backward. The world changes, industries change, knowledge expands. If you aren't actively growing, you're falling behind. And the gap only widens over time. 5 years later, they couldn't understand why they were struggling, why opportunities seemed to pass them by, why they felt increasingly irrelevant. They had chosen comfort over growth, and life handed them neither. There are seasons in life where growth is not just important but absolutely necessary. When you start a new career, when you become a parent, when you face a major setback or crisis, when an opportunity presents itself that requires more of you than you've ever given before. In these seasons, trying to avoid growth, to keep everything and everyone the same, is like trying to hold back the tide with a broom. You exhaust yourself and the tide still comes in. Now let's talk about what happens to relationships when you grow, because this is where the fear of outgrowing others really hits home. First, understand that not all relationships are meant to last a lifetime. Some people are in your life for a reason, some for a season, and some for a lifetime. Recognizing which is which can save you a lot of pain. When you grow, relationships tend to do one of four things. They grow with you. These are the beautiful relationships where your growth inspires and challenges others to grow too. You rise together, challenge each other, and celebrate each other's evolution. These are precious. Nurture them. They support you even if they don't join you. These people may not want the same things you want or may not be ready to change in the same ways, but they love you and support your journey. They're happy for your success even if they choose a different path. These relationships often need to be redefined but can remain meaningful. They resist and try to pull you back. These relationships become strained because the other person feels threatened by your growth. They may criticize your new direction, remind you of past failures, or try to instill doubt. They often frame their resistance as concern. I just don't want to see you get hurt. I'm worried you're working too hard. Who do you think you are anyway? These relationships may need to be limited for a while. The mix of these four types will be different for everyone. But expecting all relationships to fall into the first category is unrealistic and will only lead to disappointment. I had a good friend years ago when I was first changing my life. We used to work together at the department store. When I started going to seminars, reading books, and talking about building a different kind of life, he would listen politely, but change the subject. When I left the department store to start giving talks on success, our friendship grew strained. One day he told me, "You know, you've changed. You're not the same guy anymore." He didn't mean it as a compliment. I looked him in the eye and said, "Thank you for noticing. I've worked very hard to change. I hope 5 years from now you won't recognize me again, because that will mean I'm still growing." We drifted apart after that. It wasn't angry or dramatic. We just had less and less to talk about. Years later, I ran into him again. He was still at the department store, still complaining about the same things, still living the same life. But now, there was something new in his eyes when he looked at me: regret. And in that moment, I wondered if I had failed him as a friend by not trying harder to bring him along on my journey. So here's what I want you to understand. When you grow and some relationships change or fall away, it doesn't mean you've done something wrong. It means you're doing something right. It means you're alive, you're changing, you're becoming. What happens when you outgrow your old circles? You find new ones. And this is one of the most exciting parts of growth. There's an old saying that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I think there's a lot of truth to that. Your environment always wins. So as you grow, you need to consciously create environments that support and further that growth. This means seeking out mentors who are where you want to be. It means finding peers who are on similar journeys, asking similar questions, facing similar challenges. It means creating or joining communities where growth is expected and celebrated. When I was starting out as a speaker, I made it a point to spend time with people who were better speakers than I was. I'd listen to them talk, watch how they worked a room, ask them questions, invite their feedback. Was it comfortable? No. I often felt out of my league, but was it valuable? Absolutely. I grew faster in those uncomfortable environments than I ever would have in comfortable ones. The beautiful thing about finding these new circles is that you start to realize you weren't crazy for wanting more. There are other people who think like you, who dream like you, who are working and stretching and trying like you. And suddenly, the journey doesn't feel so lonely anymore. But let me be clear. Finding new circles doesn't mean you have to completely abandon old ones. You can maintain connections with family and old friends even as you build new relationships. It just might require some conscious effort and clear boundaries. So what are some practical steps you can take to continue growing, even if it means outgrowing some people and situations? First, get crystal clear on what you want and why you want it. Growth without direction is just change for the sake of change. But growth with purpose is powerful. What kind of person do you want to become? What kind of life do you want to create? What contribution do you want to make? Get clear on these questions and the path will start to reveal itself. Second, invest in yourself every single day. Your mind is like a garden. It will grow something whether you intentionally plant it or not. But if you don't plant flowers and vegetables, you'll end up with weeds. So be intentional about what you put into your mind. Read books that challenge you. Listen to people who know more than you. Take courses. Attend seminars. The best investment you'll ever make is the investment in yourself. Third, practice courage daily. Growth requires courage. Courage to try new things, courage to fail, courage to look foolish, courage to outgrow situations that once felt safe. Make it a habit to do one thing every day that scares you, even if it's small. Your courage muscle will grow, just like any other muscle. Fourth, find ways to bring others along. Yes, you'll naturally outgrow some situations and relationships, but you can also be intentional about inviting others to grow with you. Share what you're learning, extend invitations. Be patient with those who are interested but uncertain. Some of your greatest joys will come from growing alongside others. Fifth, build resilience for the journey. Growth isn't always comfortable or linear. There will be setbacks. There will be days when you wonder if it's worth it. There will be criticism and resistance, both external and internal. Developing resilience through practices like gratitude, reflection, rest, and celebration will help you stay the course when it gets tough. Some will say you're being selfish. Some will say you think you're better than everyone else. Some will remind you of past failures or limitations. Who do you think you are, they'll ask, as if staying small is some kind of virtue. Here's what you need to understand about criticism. It says more about the critic than it does about you. People who are secure in themselves, people who are on their own growth journeys, don't feel threatened when others grow. They celebrate it, they're inspired by it, they're curious about it. But people who have chosen comfort over growth, people who have settled, people who have given up on their own dreams, will often try to pull you back down to where they are. Not because they don't care about you, but because your growth reminds them of what they've given up. So how do you handle this criticism? First, expect it. Don't be surprised by it. Second, try to respond with compassion rather than defensiveness. Remember, hurt people hurt people. Third, use discernment about which criticism to take seriously. Sometimes there's wisdom in criticism, even when it's poorly delivered. And sometimes it's just noise. Learn to tell the difference. And fourth, keep going anyway. Don't let the fear of criticism stop you. As President Theodore Roosevelt said in his famous Man in the Arena speech, it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena. Be the person in the arena. Be the person who tries, who fails, who gets up again, who keeps growing no matter what anyone says. Now, as we start to bring this conversation to a close, I want to circle back to why you shouldn't be afraid to outgrow everyone. You shouldn't be afraid because growth is what you're here for. You are not a finished product. You're a work in progress, and the whole point of your life is to progress, to become more of who you could be, to make the contribution only you can make. You shouldn't be afraid, because the alternative to growth is so much worse. A life of stagnation, a life of regret, a life of wondering what might have been if you'd only had the courage to change. You shouldn't be afraid, because your growth might be exactly what someone else needs to see to give them permission to grow too. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to go first, willing to be different, willing to raise the standard. Why not let that person be you? And finally, you shouldn't be afraid, because you're stronger than you think. You can handle the discomfort of change. You can navigate the shifting of relationships. You can find new circles, new mentors, new friends. You can withstand criticism. You are more resilient, more adaptable, and more capable than you've given yourself credit for. So let me leave you with this. 20 years from now, you will be somewhere, you will be someone. The question is, where will you be, and who will you be? Will you be essentially the same person you are today, just older? Or will you be someone who has continued to learn, to grow, to become? Make that choice. Start today. Pick up a book instead of the remote. Have the conversation you've been avoiding. Take the class. Make the change. Set the boundary. Raise your standard. Do the thing you know you need to do, because here's the truth. Some people will fall away as you grow, but the right people will find you. The right opportunities will open up. The right life will unfold. Not without effort. Not without setbacks, but with a richness and meaning that would never have been possible if you'd stayed small to keep everyone comfortable. You weren't born to stay small. You were born to grow, to become, to contribute. So grow, become, contribute, and don't apologize for it. The world needs you to be all that you can be, not less. Nothing less will do. But success is not something you pursue. Success is something you attract by the person you become. When you focus on growth, when you commit to becoming more, you naturally attract different opportunities, different connections, different possibilities. The universe rewards growth, but it punishes stagnation. Many ask me, Mr. Rohn, how can I have more? And I always tell them the same thing. You have to become more. Want more success? Become more valuable. Want better relationships? Become a better person. Want more impact? Become more influential. This journey of becoming is the real adventure of life. Not accumulating things, but developing yourself. Not getting, but growing. Not having, but being. Consider how nature works. A fruit tree doesn't struggle and strain to produce fruit. It simply grows. It puts down strong roots. It stretches toward the sun. It weathers the storms. And naturally, inevitably, it bears fruit. Your life works the same way. Focus on growth and the fruits will come. What holds most people back isn't lack of opportunity. It's lack of growth. They want the rewards without the development. They want the harvest without tending the soil. They want the destination without the journey. I've met countless people who say they want success. They say they want advance in their careers. They say they want financial freedom. But when you look at their daily habits, there's a disconnect. They aren't reading. They aren't learning. They aren't challenging themselves. They aren't willing to be uncomfortable. And worst of all, they aren't willing to separate themselves from people, habits, and environments that keep them small. Growth requires elimination. You can't add new behaviors without subtracting old ones. You can't adopt new mindsets without releasing old ones. You can't build new relationships without creating space for them. Something has to go to make room for something new. This elimination process makes people uneasy. They want to add, but not subtract. They want the new without releasing the old. But life doesn't work that way. There are only so many hours in a day. only so much mental energy, only so much focus you can give. To grow beyond your current situation, you must be willing to make choices, hard choices, choices that might not make sense to others, choices that might make some people uncomfortable. The oak tree doesn't apologize to the acorn for what it had to leave behind to reach its full height. And neither should you. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Jim, this all sounds good in theory. But what about loyalty? What about commitment? What about tradition? These are important values. I'm not suggesting you toss them aside casually. What I am suggesting is that you get clear on your highest commitments. What are you really loyal to? Your own growth? The contribution you want to make? The example you want to set? Or staying the same to avoid rocking the boat? Sometimes the most loyal thing you can do is to change, to become better, to raise the standard for yourself and by extension for everyone around you. I know a woman who struggled for years with her weight and health. She tried every diet, every program, with minimal success. Why? Because every time she started to make progress, the people closest to her would sabotage her efforts. Oh, one piece of cake won't hurt. You're no fun anymore since you started this healthy kick. You're getting too thin. You don't look like yourself. Finally, she realized she had to make a choice. She could stay sick and overweight to keep these relationships comfortable, or she could get healthy and risk tension. She chose health. And yes, some relationships became strained. Some people kept trying to pull her back. But interestingly, others were inspired. They saw her commitment, they witnessed her transformation, and slowly they began to ask questions, to make changes themselves. 5 years later, her entire family is healthier, not because she preached at them, but because she was willing to go first, to be different, to prioritize growth over comfort. Her selfishness in focusing on her own health ended up being the most generous thing she could have done for her loved ones. This principle applies in every area of life. Your willingness to grow, to change, to become more, even when it's uncomfortable, can be the catalyst that sparks growth in others. But even if it doesn't, even if others choose to stay the same, your growth remains your responsibility. Many people live with what I call permission slip syndrome. They're waiting for someone to give them permission to change, permission to succeed, permission to want more, permission to be different, permission to outgrow their current circumstances. Let me tell you plainly, the permission you're waiting for can only come from one person, you. You have to give yourself permission to change, to grow, to want more, to become more. And with that permission comes responsibility. The responsibility to do the work, to face the discomfort, to weather the criticism, to navigate the changing relationships, to build new skills, new mindsets, new environment. Some misunderstand the personal development journey. They think it's about becoming superior to others. It's not. It's about becoming superior to your former self. It's about competing with the person you were yesterday, not with the person sitting next to you. When you outgrow people and situations, it's not a judgment on them, it's simply a natural consequence of your growth. The 5th grade teacher isn't offended when students move on to 6th grade. The small pot isn't offended when the plant needs to be transferred to a larger one. Growth necessitates change. I've observed over the years that most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year, but vastly underestimate what they can accomplish in 5 years. This perspective matters because growth is cumulative. Small daily improvements add up to massive changes over time. If you improve just 1% each day, at the end of a year, you're nearly 38 times better than when you started. That's the power of compound growth. But most people never experience this power because they aren't consistent. They start and stop. They get excited, then discouraged. They commit, then quit when it gets hard. Consistency requires something many aren't willing to give: discipline. The ability to do what needs to be done even when you don't feel like doing it. The willingness to show up day after day, regardless of mood or circumstance. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. And discipline is often what separates those who outgrow their circumstances from those who remain stuck. Consider this. The word discipline shares the same root as disciple. A disciple is a student, a learner, a follower of a particular teaching or teacher. To be disciplined is to be a devoted student of your own potential, a faithful follower of the principles of growth. This kind of discipline isn't about punishment or restriction. It's about devotion to a cause. And what cause could be more worthy of your devotion than becoming all you were created to be? As you continue this journey of growth, you'll face moments of doubt, moments when the familiar beckons you back, moments when the criticism stings, moments when the path forward seems unclear. In these moments, remember why you started. Remember that growth isn't just about you. It's about what you can give, how you can serve, what you can contribute. The more you grow, the more you have to offer. The more you become, the more you can give. I've never met a truly successful person who regretted their commitment to personal growth. I've never heard someone say, I wish I hadn't read all those books, or I wish I hadn't developed all these skills, or I wish I hadn't invested in becoming a better person. But I've met countless people who regretted playing small, who regretted letting fear hold them back, who regretted caring more about what others thought than about fulfilling their potential. Don't let that be your story. Choose growth. Choose becoming. Choose the path of transformation, even when it means outgrowing people and situations that once felt safe and familiar. After all, the caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly by staying safe in the cocoon. At some point it has to break free, spread its wings and fly, and so do you. So do you.